meeting to order. Thanks for everybody's patience. We did have a successful workshop just a little while ago, so that was really good. If you don't mind, calling to order together our regular scheduled meeting of January 3rd, 2019 of the Apex Town Council. During our invocation time tonight, I'd like to ask you to bow your heads and simply reflect on our good fortune as the country we live in and the freedoms we have. And if you feel led to ask for any wisdom and guidance, now's the time to do so. Thank you. Please join with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone here today. There are a couple of things I want to point out just before we get started. If you missed the agenda, there is a white packet stapled like this out on the podium in the hall. Feel free to run out and grab one. I don't mind if you jump up and go get it. Second thing is, if you intend to speak tonight in either the public forum or our public hearings, you do need to do two things. One is get the public speaking guideline, which is out there. It's a yellow sheet, so you need to be familiar with the guidelines. And also, you need to sign the appropriate sheet that's there on the ledge. So if you intend to speak at one of our items tonight, make sure that you've done those two things. The clerk will be collecting those by the time we get to the public forum time. We now go into a time of presentations, and we have Ken is at Redfoot with AIA, and he's going to talk about the Electric Operations Center site and building design development plans.
Good to go. Hello, everyone. My name's Ken Redfoot. I'm the president of CRA Associates. This evening, my helper is my business partner, David Taylor. He's the project architect for your project. We're going to be doing a brief presentation on the Electric Operations Center, which we're so proud to be working with your really good staff in creating this new facility for you. I want to start off by saying that we went through a very comprehensive programming process, and at the end of that process, we were able to ascertain essentially the program summary needs, which basically are shown here. We've zeroed in on a requirement for a one-story, 20,000 square foot building, the need for vehicle storage building, and also a storage pole barn to actually put vehicles under that to protect them from inclement weather. Obviously, I'm not going to go into all of that detail there for you because I'm trying to be brief tonight so I can get to all of your questions. Your site is located basically where your substation is, substation number 5. And so we're taking advantage of the land that's available on the site for the development of your 20,000 square foot building and all of the required storage and parking that will serve your facility. One of the things I want to highlight right out of the box is, in combination with the existing substation here, is a wonderful thing, which is a great feature of the site, which is a huge oak tree that's located right here on the south side of the site. Milano Avenue will be constructed as a pass-through right in front of the site, and the building, the 20,000 square foot building right here is the one-story building. It's going to be set in a way to allow for the retention, and actually I think we're going to be showing off the oak tree in a very powerful way. Also, the building has a long face to the south, which allows for the possibility of solar panels to be used extensively on the building. We have basically those three elements that I was talking about, the administrative office building and required staff areas in this building with also a warehouse, and I'll show you that in the next plan as well. This is the vehicle storage building, which is basically 4 bays of storage and a wash bay, and this is the pull barn right here. These areas right here are miscellaneous storage for utility poles, new equipment storage, and parking for staff. This is the building, basically right here, the one-story building, main entrance on the south side. Basically, it stacks up as a very efficient building. The plan actually is a direct response, obviously, to the program, and so we really hewed close to the program, and we were able to work with your staff to get a very efficient and very functional plan. Entrance located here, break room and training room with a kitchen in between, and then basically towards the back with direct access to the parking and the utility area. We have crew rooms and shop area, warehouse located here. Right off of the main entrance from the south side, you have the office area, administrative offices, and right in between the whole combination of work areas is the locker room area. These next couple of slides are basically depictions of what it will look like. Again, we've worked very closely with your staff in trying to understand the aesthetic that you have here in Apex, but also try to get a building that actually reflects what we think is important with the operations center. This is the Milano Drive right here. There's access point into the back work area right here. There's also a driveway over in this area that gets to that parking that I was talking about earlier. Main entrance is located here with this kind of high-level lobby area right here with a lot of natural light and good parking right here and handicapped accessibility right here. You can see the highlighting of the large tree that we're going to be preserving as a very important element of this project. This is a campus view from the southwest. It's basically just a different view showing the staff parking and then access to basically the break room and the training room here. This is that 4-bay garage and the pole barn right here. Just a different view to kind of give you a sense of the overall plan and the way that it works. Again, the importance of the large tree and the preserve of that. But this also shows you how we're going to be working on the break area and the training room and develop an outside kind of activity area with a covered area for folks to have, kind of get together and meet and greets and things of that nature, which is a very important part of the Electrical Operations Center mission. Northeast is basically showing again the pole barn, the 4-bay garage with a car wash, and then the back service side of that new 20,000 square foot building. This shows basically the concept ideas for the how we're going to set up the front of the building. I mentioned that large sort of open lobby area, which will be very open in terms of natural light. It will be also a place that will be able to display the trophies that are often won by the folks in the Electrical Operations Center. So it'll be a real highlighted space, and so it'll be also very closely aligned with the break room and the training room. Since this is a south facade of the building, we're going to be developing a sort of a sunscreen that goes all the way across the building and highlighting off of these columns the use of kind of a specialized electric light to add a little bit of highlighting to that facade. This is a different view of the same area, just a kind of an aerial view. And this is the final slide we have. I just wanted to keep this brief and answer any questions. But this shows that whole sunscreen and the way that it can be layered on front of the building so that you basically have a very cost-effective, clean, functional building. And we'll use this sunscreen across the front to help you with solar, basically the diminishing the sun that gets in on the south side of the building. I wanted to make sure that you understood that since we have a south-facing roof, we can incorporate an array of solar panels on the roof, and basically we can, I think in the first, I'll go back real quick. Sorry for this. There we go. So right here, that's sort of our artistic notion of the number of panels, but we have not concluded the exact number of panels that we're going to be having on this building. But that's basically to show that we have a great possibility of solar panels at that location.
Can the whole roof be covered at that place? Or is there a weight limit?
There's not on this building, no.
Does it stand-
Since it's still in design, the sooner that we know exactly the array of the building, then we can match it up with the structural engineering that's required to support the panels.
That's standing seam roofing, I assume?
Yeah.
One real quick comment. I know we're looking at this one roof that's facing south, but those other roofs that are almost flat, those buildings should be set up for adding solar
As well.
as well, because at that slope, you're still going to get 80% of the production on a flat slope roof like that.
Are you talking about
I'm
these,
talking
or
about
you're
the
talking about in the back?
east-west facing roofs.
Yeah, okay.
Those buildings should be set up also.
Okay. So basically, look at setting up all the roofs
Everyone.
as a possibility.
Yes.
Okay. That's something we'll take back and talk to the staff about and look at it very carefully.
The locker room, you
Mhm.
noted there, I assume there's a shower and stuff like that
Yes.
there?
Mhm.
Is there any facility there for exercise equipment of any kind? Probably not.
Not at this point. We haven't looked at that. But, we can, of course, this is an information gathering meeting, so we can take back that idea and that input back to the staff and see whether there's a desire to
I don't know how much
incorporate.
staff would be using it, but I would, just a treadmill or
Well, that doesn't take much space, so.
No, it doesn't. It
Yeah.
doesn't.
And we could tie it into the solar panels.
Yeah, and
There you
well,
go. Run the treadmill power.
yeah, no, we'll have them working at night so they can keep the lights on. Okay.
How about I don't know how the department works, but I know they're always on call, like in bad weather and storms and stuff.
Yeah.
Is there sleeping facilities? Is that necessary at a? I don't know. I don't know how they.
We bring in cots and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay.
There's the crew room, and
Yeah,
the training
okay.
room would be adequate.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a kitchen and all that.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
We set up temporary facilities for that.
Any other comments, questions?
And the sunshade thing, do you change the angle of it? Is that how it works?
No, we're going to actually engineer it so that it's the appropriate angle to allow the sun in the wintertime and cut it out in the summertime.
Gotcha, okay.
Yeah. Great. Well, if there are no more comments or questions, then we'll move on to the next level of design. Thanks so much for your attention.
Good job on that,
Sign of
saving
the
that big tree too. That's pretty cool that you're.
Yeah,
able
that is cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
That was the first thing that we were told when we went onto the site with the staff.
Thank you, Mr. Redfoot.
Thank you.
Okay, we now move to consent agenda. This is a time where we typically approve non-controversial items in one single motion. As always, any council member can remove an item from consent in order to discuss it later in the evening if they so wish. I haven't been made aware of any, so at this time I'll ask, is there a motion to approve consent?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve consent. Discussion?
Yes, I would like to say consent 09. I understand where we are in the process, but I did not support the EDO amendments fully. But I understand where we are in the process, so
Okay.
I will vote for the
Okay.
consent agenda. But
Okay, got it. So, all right, got it.
Yep.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor of approving consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, that passes unanimously. Appreciate the comment, Councilman Moyer there. We now set our regular meeting agenda. I've not been made aware of any changes to the agenda, so I'll simply ask, is there a motion to approve the agenda as written?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, no. All right, the agenda is set. We now go to public forum. This is a time where we listen to public comment. Hopefully you've already signed in and read the guidelines. We'll see. Is anyone signed up on there, Mr. Town Clerk? Okay, we're good. We'll have someone. If you know you signed up, come on up and I'll call your name. I see. Okay. So is it Vinitha Panchikala? All right, Vinitha Panchikala. And it says you are speaking for a group of 4 or more. Could you please indicate by raise of hand who she is speaking for? Okay, very good. Thank you. Please proceed. And typically when you're speaking for a large group, you have 9 minutes. Please state your name and your address for the record.
I'm Vinitha Panchikala.
And your address?
I live in 438 Manchester Park Lane.
Where's that?
It's in Morrisville.
Oh, in Morrisville. Okay. Okay, proceed. Okay.
So good evening, everyone. I'm Vinitha, and I'm here on behalf of Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, which is
Can you move the microphone a little closer to you?
So I'm here on behalf of Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh, which is Hindu Volunteers Organization in English. HSS or Hindu Swayamsevak Sangh is a non-profit social and cultural organization. It was established in 1989, and now we have over 190 chapters across US. So we are here to preserve, practice, and promote Hindu ideas. So what we do to preserve, practice, and promote Hindu ideas is we build up our characters. We practice self-discipline, self-confidence, and selfless service. We participate in physical, intellectual, and spiritual activities to build our characters. And every year, starting from 2007, we are conducting a 16-day event called Surya Namaskara Yajna. This event aims at spreading the awareness of yoga and its advantages to achieve a healthy body, mind, and spirit. Yoga is originated in ancient Indian civilization, but most often it is believed that it is associated with Hindu religion. However, it is not a religious practice. Anyone can participate. Anyone can practice Surya Namaskaras to achieve its benefits. So Surya Namaskara or sun salutations are an ancient practice of 10 simple yoga postures or yogasanas involving simple breathing techniques with each posture. So 10 yoga postures make up a set or salutation. Each salutation is given a Sanskrit name which is chanted before doing each set. There are 12 names for 12 sets. They're usually performed twice a day, once in the morning before sunrise, after the sunrise, and next in the evening before sunset, facing the sun. So this is the starting point. So you start your Surya Namaskaras in this position where you join your palms. This is the first step where you bend back and inhale. In second step, you exhale. In third step, you inhale and look up. Fourth step is a plank where you exhale. Fifth step, you hold and you don't inhale or exhale. Fifth step is a cobra pose where you inhale. Seventh step is the mountain pose where you exhale. Seventh step is a repetition of this third step and you inhale. Ninth step is the repetition of second step. 10th step is the same as the starting position, and you perform these as a set of 12. And there are so many health benefits associated with performing these Surya Namaskaras, and some of them include strengthening up your heart, muscles, and hands, toning your digestive system. It improves your memory by toning your nervous system. It promotes weight loss. It boosts your fitness and flexibility. It reduces your stress and anxiety. But not everyone can do these. People suffering with back pain or back issues cannot perform these Surya Namaskaras because there are a lot of bendings in these Surya Namaskaras. And patients who are suffering with hernia or high blood pressure, or even pregnant ladies cannot do these Surya Namaskaras. This year, we are hosting it from January 12th to January 27th of this month. You can register online or download the app to learn more about Surya Namaskara or to record your count to the national team. Or you can even come to the local chapters mentioned in the flyers and learn more about the Surya Namaskaras or even report your count. Thank you.
And if you don't mind, just to bring Apex relevance to this, I see that one of the locations is in Apex at the APA. Is that correct? Okay. All right. Thank you very much for your time.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Okay.
So last year I had the privilege of participating, and I will say that it is a very good workout. So if you get the chance to participate, then I would recommend doing so.
All right. Thank you. With that, and very good job with the presentation. Thank you very much. Y'all should be proud, family members. I assume there's some family members here. So at this point, I'll close public forum, and we'll move on through our agenda. So we now move into public hearings, and our one and only public hearing is an internal one related to Bike Apex, the comprehensive bicycle plan, with Shannon Cox presenting.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
I'm very pleased to present as our first public hearing of the new year something that we spent 2018 working on. This is our draft comprehensive bicycle plan, the first bicycle plan for the town of Apex. It was prepared through a funding opportunity. We won a competitive grant provided by the North Carolina Department of Transportation. It was prepared for us by Alta Planning and Design. The recommendations in Bike Apex have been fully integrated with Advance Apex, which is, as you know, is our update to the comprehensive transportation plan and future land use map, and you will be considering that next month. We began the process of developing Bike Apex last December with an existing conditions analysis. That led to the development of a draft bikeway network and our first public workshop, which was held last May. The draft plan and recommendations were then reviewed in a second workshop held in August. And finally, we have the final plan ready for you to consider. Throughout this process, we have engaged with the public through surveys, workshops, as well as through a steering committee, some of whom are here tonight, who've helped to guide us along the way. I'm going to walk through the different chapters of the plan to give you an idea of the contents. The first chapter is an introduction. It provides a little bit about the project as well as the planning process. It also documents the vision and goals for biking in Apex, which were established at the beginning of the process. Those are highlighted here in orange. They include enhancing mobility, creating a positive economic impact, protecting the environment, promoting equity, enhancing health, increasing safety, and what we heard loud and clear from the public is that biking in Apex will support our current quality of life and also increase livability. The second chapter is an assessment of our current conditions. It includes several maps, which I'll briefly walk through here. This map shows the destinations which were identified by the steering committee and public as key destinations for biking. You'll see with each of these pink circles, there are many within the Peakway Loop. Also, every park and school within Apex is noted with a pink circle, as is the American Tobacco Trail, East Coast Greenway, Jordan Lake, Sharon Harris area, and the parks in our neighboring town of Cary and destinations in Holly Springs. This map shows reported bicycle crashes. The triangle here represents the only fatality, which was on South Salem, and a disabling injury further on Old US 1. You also note that there have been many crashes along 55 as well as Olive Chapel Road. Our consultant conducted an assessment of existing bicycle level of comfort. The darker the color, the more advanced the rider. Of course, along US 1 and 540, bicycling is prohibited. You'll note that with the blue and the green, that's showing where riding is relatively easy to moderate. So much of the network in Apex, the residential streets, are great for biking already. This is just a little sampling of the public input that we received. When asked, how would you rate overall bicycling conditions in Apex, 44% of respondents indicated fair, and 40% indicated poor. So we have room for improvement. When asked how important it is to improve bicycling in Apex, 85% of respondents indicated this is very important. Our Advanced Apex survey had over 1,200 responses. And to the question, when I ride a bike, it's to over 90% of people indicated for exercise and recreation. And about 40% of people don't ride a bike because it doesn't feel safe. Chapter 3 is where the heart of the plan is. This is where you can find all of the recommendations. So to develop recommendations, public and steering committee input was used, the information about key destinations people want to reach, the current conditions assessment, as well as our existing plans and projects. As part of the recommendations, ALTA developed a priority project analysis as well. There were 4 big picture recommendations that came out of the plan. First, we need to keep our momentum on bicycle projects that are already in development. So that includes the Greenway projects funded with the Parks and Rec Bond, as well as bicycle and pedestrian improvements included in our upcoming roadway projects like 55, 1010, and 64. Second, we need to strategically and proactively fund and build the high priority projects, so always keeping an eye on the next priority. Third, we should use or build projects incrementally with development over time. And then finally, we need to remember that improving biking isn't just about infrastructure. There are many program recommendations as well as promotional events. There are 7 facility types recommended in the plan. I'll briefly walk through these. The first is a shared lane that's marked by this marking called a sharrow, indicating that bicycles are allowed to share the lane with cars and helping with the positioning of a bicycle. The second is just a wide paved shoulder, which you might see on a more rural road. The third is a bicycle lane, so there's an actual designated lane adjacent to the vehicular lane. The third adds a separated barrier between the bike lane and the vehicular lane. This is a side path, or what we currently call a multi-use path, our 10-foot wide asphalt path adjacent to a road. I'm going to skip this one. This is a greenway which is completely off-road, more for recreation. And then this is a new facility type introduced with Bike Apex that really blends the feel of a greenway with the location of a side path. So adjacent to a roadway, you may have a meandering path with heavy landscaping, giving it more of a park-like feel. This is the complete map of the recommended bike network. I have a larger poster version if anyone would like to look at it. Slightly tilting, I'm seeing over there, and you also have a link to it. One thing that has changed from our current plan is that we're recommending a number of bicycle lanes. You can see that along Old US 1, along Olive Chapel, and 1010 Road. The street side greenway recommendation is applied in limited areas consistent with our rural residential future land use recommendations. So those are on Hume Olive, Reagan, and a portion of Richardson Road. The Parks, Recreation, Cultural Resources Advisory Commission also considered this recommendation and recommended approval. One thing I'll just note overall about the recommendations is that you can pretty much see that there's a connection to every destination that was identified, and there's a recommendation for every road where we've seen a lot of crashes. Chapter 3 includes these cut sheets for the top 10 priority projects that give us a little bit more detailed information as we begin to work toward implementation. This is just an example for Old US 1. And then there are numerous program recommendations, including facility maintenance, safety campaigns, a map or a mobile app to help people know where our facilities are, events, signage and wayfinding, and signal detection. The final chapter is focused on implementation and how we begin to accomplish all of these goals. It includes the identification of key partners and their roles, as well as a detailed table of steps that we can take, who may lead each task, detailed information about how it can be accomplished, and recommendations on timing. During their December 10th meeting, the Planning Board unanimously recommended approval of the Comprehensive Bicycle Plan. This is your opportunity to hear any public comments and consider adoption. And then staff will continue to work toward implementation. And I'll just close with one final question. And this was posed to our steering committee at our first meeting. Do you believe Apex can become a place where people of all ages and skill levels can ride a bike to their destinations? And I think we heard from the public and our committee that the resounding answer is yes, and that this is a first or a good step toward getting us there. Thank you.
Questions for Ms. Cox?
I have one. On the previous screen, do you mind clicking back to that? December 10th, Planning Board recommends adoption with changes recommended by staff. What changes are you guys recommending?
So they have been incorporated in the plan that is online and available to you. There were some mapping errors that needed to be addressed. And I can see if I remember each of them. It's in your staff report as well.
Okay, they were all included in that.
They've all been incorporated and they're available online since that meeting.
That's fine. Okay.
So, were you guys defining bicycle as just non-powered, like a non-powered bike, or was there a discussion about the technology changing over time and like electric bikes, or I mean, I guess scooters are a different thing, but kind of how the speeds may change with different technology and that sort of and activities?
There was definitely discussion about electric bikes. There was interest, I would say, at our public meetings and workshops and comments. I know we've talked about looking at the need for charging stations. That's something that staff are tasked to do. But I don't think that it drove the recommendations. as far as the infrastructure and network.
Okay.
Anything else from anyone? I think this is fantastic. I think this defines Apex as no longer a tiny little town that just kind of does things ad hoc. I mean, this is a plan that we've never seen anything like. And I think the opportunity here is really great and I know it's taken a while to implement a lot of these things, and it could be, a couple of decades. I mean, depends, right? But I think it gives the opportunity for people to use alternate modes. And I think the other thing that is of note is the 90% that are biking for recreation and exercise meets that less than 10% are biking for commute or shopping or errands or whatever. And I think ultimately, if we're dense enough, we ought to be able to get to where that number can go up. It means people need to choose biking, and if we make it accessible to them in a way that feels secure and safe and not inconvenient, maybe more will choose it. I know it was my only choice when I was 13 living here, but this is great though. I guess if there's no other comments, I'll ask if there's a motion for adoption.
Mr. Mayor,
Oh,
open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is a public hearing. Correct. Good point. So I'll open the public hearing, and we had no one sign up. So that formality is closed. I'll close the public hearing. No, that's all right. We had to do it. We did it. Thank you for the reminder.
Yes, sir.
It was easy to get excited about that. So I'll ask for a motion for adoption.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion.
Can I say something real fast? I wanted to just point out that I thought it was great. The way it was presented was fantastic, by the way, and also the rankings that you guys did with the prioritization, and it was very objective. And I thought, it's easy to say, oh, I want that there if you live nearby or whatever, but that was a very nice way of separating out the projects that maybe should rise to the top of the funding and not. And so I thought that was a really nice way that, and the input that went into that was fantastic. So I'm really proud to be one of the ones who's going to vote on this.
Great. All right. If there's no other discussion, all right, I'll call for the vote. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, that passes unanimously. And that concludes public hearings. There is no old or unfinished business. We now move to new business number 1. This is a transportation engineer. And while Russell is coming up, I'll let you. Are you coming up, or is this Shannon?
Shannon first.
Shannon's
Both of
first. Oh, look. All right. I'm gonna reverse your names here on the list. All right, Ms. Cox is going to talk from the long-range planning perspective, right? About transportation.
I like hearing those words, long-range
Long-range
planning.
planning. That's right.
Grab a quick drink.
It's like when you pack your lunch before you head out on your bicycle. That's long-range planning.
Carry an air pump.
Okay, thank you. So the new business item tonight is about the potential connection of Shepherd's Vineyard Drive under US 64. To give you a little bit of background, and the audience a little bit of background, the NCDOT US 64 Corridor Improvement Project includes proposed interchanges at Lake Pine Drive and Laura Duncan Road. So that means instead of a at-grade signalized crossing, there would be ramps to get between these roads and US 64. Construction is anticipated to begin in 2022. There was a public meeting on June 21st of 2018, and at that public meeting, the alternative of connecting Shepherd's Vineyard Drive under US 64 was shown as one of the possibilities. The council heard public comment on this topic on the December 4th, 2018 meeting. Staff provided an informational memo in response. And so the purpose of us being here tonight is really to provide you information in person, to see if there are questions or clarifications, considerations that we need to bring to NCDOT, but not to request an action from you. This is really for information. So just to give everyone a little bit of vicinity, here's Old Raleigh Road, which turns into Lake Pine Drive. This will be a future interchange. Shepherd's Vineyard Drive, here's Ava Perry Library. Here's the current intersection with US 64, and then Shepherd's Vineyard Drive extends north and connects to Pine Plaza. From here you can access Costco and Nichols Plaza, as well as the Pine Plaza area. Shepherd's Vineyard Drive used to connect so that you could directly go across US 64. Now you can only turn right in from 64, right out, and then left over. The same movements happening on the north side. The next, here's a visualization that was shared at the public meeting just to give a little bit of a sense of what's being proposed. So here is the proposed interchange at Lake Pine Drive. And basically it shows that with these ramps, that right in, right out, left over movement between Shepherd's Vineyard and US 64 will not be possible. This proposal shows an underpass basically allowing Shepherd's Vineyard Drive to continue so that people can cross 64.
Shannon, it couldn't even be a right-in if it was not an underpass? They got rid of the right-in also?
Concept, a different concept had it. The right, right?
It did have a right-in?
Concept one.
One alternative had that. DOT hasn't officially identified a preferred alternative, but they have shared with us in meetings that this will likely be the preferred alternative for this location, which would not allow the right-in movement.
So you can come back to it. I was just looking at Shepherd's Vineyard Drive, and there's no renderings of any vegetation remaining on that road.
It is hard to see in this with the roadway label, but we do have a better graphic to show you that further in the
The
presentation.
Wendy's and the new car wash on the corner of Lake Pine and 64, what's going on with them? And the Woody's furniture and all that stuff in this rendering, would they go away or?
So what we're anticipating, and none of this is final, just want to remind you, we're anticipating that Wendy's and Woody's would likely be takes, but the new car wash would not. The next several slides are just to give you context about Shepherd's Vineyard Drive and the existing conditions. Here's a very brief video. This begins at Shepherd's Drive looking north. This is 64, and here's the Pine Plaza shops. You can see that you can currently make a right out, a right in. Here's the landscape median at this part of the road. Business across the street there. It's posted 35 miles per hour. 2-lane road. There are no residential driveways accessing Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. The uses that are along Shepherd's Vineyard Drive include the neighborhood amenity center and parking lot, medical offices, Bright Horizons Daycare, and the Ava Perry Library. More dentist's office, and then on the north side, the Faith Baptist Church, Pine Plaza shops, and then at the intersection of Pine Plaza and Shepherd's Vineyard, the apartments there.
Do you know if all these were in place when the road was two-way, or is it do these have to develop after the right-in, right-out thing happened?
Russell can probably answer that better than I can. It's before my time.
Everything was there, but I'm not sure about the Dollinger Toad at the corner, but I think everything else was there.
Okay.
Most everything, I've been here 20 years, most everything has been there.
Okay.
Just a little bit of the multimodal aspect of this road already. There is a path between the from Chimney Hill Drive to the Ava Perry Library parking lot. There's sidewalk along Old Raleigh Road and Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. There is a park and ride and bus shelter for our regional bus routes on Shepherd's Vineyard. And then there's also sidewalk on Pine Plaza Drive. This is a picture of the landscape median that is out there. This is in front of the Shepherd's Vineyard Neighborhood Amenity Center and the frontage of the library.
Where's that angle from? Is that from standing on 64 looking down?
No, well, close to 64, right outside of the library entrance facing south
Okay, looking down. Okay, down towards Lord Duncan.
Towards Old
toward Old Raleigh Road.
Old Raleigh, okay, yeah, Old Raleigh. Sorry.
Just a reminder, at the December 4th meeting and in the comments submitted to NCDOT, some of the input against this potential connection was concern about increased traffic and safety risk associated with that traffic, a general sacrifice in the quality of life, a thought that the Shepherd's Vineyard connection could be redundant to the Lake Pine interchange, and suggestions that instead of building this connection, funds could be redirected to noise abatement, to median enhancements, and other things. There were also concerns about design. I know it was mentioned that this would be a tunnel and would have some sight distance issues. DOT did receive numerous comments in support of the connection as well. These are taken from a draft summary they provided to us. Wake County wrote a letter in support of the connection, noting that it was very important for the Ava Perry Library. Numerous comments noted that they liked the idea of the bicycle and pedestrian access here across US 64, that this will help to prevent US 64 from becoming a barrier to local mobility, and just general support. So I'm going to turn it over to Russell to provide some clarifications.
So following up on some of the previous interest in this, in the landscaping, NCDOT is currently preparing a landscaping plan. You see a snapshot here, but the next slide's got a larger image of that. It's our understanding from NCDOT that the landscape medians, and there are two very large medians south of Chimney Hill Drive, would not be impacted by the connection. Those would remain as is. North of there, you have a median in front of the Eva Perry Library. It's our understanding that median would have to be reconstructed and those trees would have to come out. They also have to grade in front of the library frontage, and they're working with the library now, with Wake County, to discuss that access and impacts to their property. There's, of course, as Shannon pointed out, they're in support of the connection, and they are interested in being involved in the process.
Is it going to be a move of the driveway for the libraries further south?
I think it impacts more the grade of the driveway, so they're trying to see exactly how that's going to tie in and how if the alignment has to shift slightly. The tie-in point, as I remember, was pretty much the same location as it is now, but it is going to have to be because
So
the grade of
about
the
the sight lines you think are engineering-wise maybe within the range of what's safe?
Right, yeah, DOT's not going to create a sight distance problem with this location. I mean, they're grading the road down, so if anything, that should improve some of the sight lines over, if it was higher, it'd be more of a crest. So we don't expect any problems from that, and they've not pointed out any problems that they anticipate.
So with this plan to get to Eva Perry, we'd have to go down to Lake Pine or come through Old Raleigh, is that correct?
If it wasn't connected? Or?
Correct, if it's basically like Sean.
Like here, I'll go back. This is the blown up version of landscape concept, so it's probably a little bit easier to see here. But you can see this is Eva Perry Library. This is a newly replanted median where the old median was taken out. The road has to neck down to 2 lanes because they're not carrying that median underneath the bridge structures. But you'll see there's 2 bridges and there's a gap in between the bridges, sort of similar to Salem Street as it passes under 64 out here, where you've got a gap underneath. It's just a little bit narrower roadway than Salem Street is. But this does provide and shows the connection. Now, you're correct. If it wasn't connected across, then anybody on the north side of the road would have to travel around to Lake Pine and come down Old Raleigh and come back up to the library, and then they'd have to come back out. So it's a longer trip from them. It adds, if you're at the apartments at the end of the north end of Shepherd's Vineyard Drive, it adds about a half mile to your trip versus having a direct connection. So it's a significant distance from that point if you're looking at that trip. But this shows just again a concept for the landscape plan. So are there any questions on that any further?
So the guy showed us the map before, and there was yellow of improvement. So you're saying that the improvements down on the southern part, toward Lake Pine, would be much more minor compared to any kind of changes.
Correct. There's no
closer to
plans
the
to
library.
change the median or the footprint of the road south of Chimney Hill Drive. So in front of the amenity center for Shepherd's Vineyard neighborhood, it's our understanding that they're not going to change those.
Okay.
I don't know if they're going to widen the road. We did ask for bike lanes. I don't know if they have to widen the road for bike lanes or just restripe. But as we get into more detail with that, we'll be able to provide additional input.
It'll be those kind of changes, not major.
Right.
Relating the-
We're not trying to reconstruct the entire roadway from Old Raleigh north to south. Basically, what we're trying to do is incorporate bicycle and pedestrian improvements and landscaping and not have any impacts that wouldn't be necessary to provide for the connection.
And the road's going to drop to the north, I guess, too, to get underneath the 64. So
That's correct.
That won't affect any of the entrances to the shopping center or the.
It's our understanding that it will. I think the church access, they're going to have to extend a driveway further to the north, and they may have to cut off access to the shopping center at this point, but they would still have a connection further back to the shopping center.
Okay.
But again, it's pretty early, so they don't have a full design plan yet.
Okay.
Because that's where they'd have to start digging out from that point, you're saying?
Correct. Yeah, they're starting up here near the shopping center on this end, and down here at Eva Perry on this end, and they're having to lower the road, that crest going up towards 64.
Yeah.
So all that has to be reconstructed.
Okay.
Has there been discussion of relocating the park and ride? Because it wouldn't have direct access off of 64.
No, not as far as I know.
So actually, from a transit perspective, we have begun talking with Go Triangle, who provides that regional service, about the potential connection of Shepherd's Vineyard, and they were very supportive of that idea. It may help with rerouting some of their bus service.
But not moving the stop or anything.
No, we don't yet know if we would need to change where the parking is. I think that's just a little further in the details than we are.
And,
Go ahead.
and a bus will be able to go under this if they
Yes.
so decided.
Yeah.
So one of the major concerns was about just safety risk regarding the increased cars. Has there been some traffic study? I mean, there's been traffic studies. Sometimes we see them like for neighborhoods. Do you have like the traffic counts expected? And
Well, in later
that
slides,
means-
we'll get to the
Okay.
counts.
Okay,
So
sure.
if you want me to continue
Sure.
moving to that, I'll talk about it when we get to that. This next slide is clarification on the noise abatement. The connection of this is not related to noise abatement funding. It doesn't decrease the funding if you provide this connection. Noise abatement is reviewed based on federal policy. There is guidance for that. They are working on a noise analysis, and it'll be incorporated, if warranted, and also if reasonable and feasible, because they have to consider the impacts of the noise abatement itself on the existing neighborhood. So that'll be, additional information that will come with the next step in design.
And that would be along Shepherd's Vineyard Drive? Was
Along US 64. Basically, when you're widening a facility like US 64, you have to study it for increased noise in the neighborhoods, and it would be something like possibly sound walls like were installed along US 1 when they widened US 1. But that is based on their study.
How do they measure that sound?
They have meters that read existing sound in the neighborhood, and they do noise modeling and a computer modeling software to determine when you widen the road. They look at the traffic volumes and the speeds, and then they calculate what the expected noise increase is.
You typically get plus dB ratings,
Correct.
like little zones as you move further and further away.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
When is that study going to be concluded and a decision made on that?
Noise abatement, I would assume they'd be wrapping that up by mid-year, if not sooner.
I think
I don't know.
that's about the timing they told us.
Yeah. And then more clarification on funding of enhancements. They allocate 1.5% of total construction costs for landscaping, so that the connection of this doesn't take away from your landscaping budget. And they will replace existing bicycle and pedestrian facilities. And also funding for new bike and ped facilities will be shared between NCDOT and the town. So depending on what we're asking for, there's a cost share formula for that. And we're currently working with NCDOT on our request for bicycle and ped enhancements and what that means for the corridor.
Is the actual tunnel versus is that option going to be an added cost to the town if they go that with that concept versus
My understanding, the grade separation itself wouldn't necessarily add a cost, but asking for instance, if we ask for bicycle lanes, that could be a cost share component, and if we ask for additional or wider sidewalks, that could be a cost share
kind of things.
component. So above and beyond the simple connection. I mean, I think they would. My understanding, they would provide 5-foot sidewalk on both sides without cost share.
Right, because there's sidewalk on both sides of Shepherd's Vineyard now, so they would connect those to the crossing.
But obviously, building a tunnel is going to be more expensive overall. But the town's Apex is not going to shoulder that difference in cost of a non-tunnel plan.
Right. Well, the discussion of this concept and the connection to serve. Even if you don't think about the bicycle and pedestrian needs, the design team and NCDOT felt like it was an important connection for local mobility. Because they know it once was connected across and it provided a good local route. And I've heard some comments about redundancy in your transportation facilities and how that's a bad thing. Well, actually, we view it as a good thing because it gives people options. When you have other congested areas, it gives local residents another way around. If you have a traffic accident, and a quick story about that, I was heading to work one day on Laura Duncan, and there was a fire truck parked in the middle of the road where there was a wreck. And if I didn't have Pine Plaza Drive connected through, I wouldn't have been able to get to work that way. So having some of these redundant facilities like these collector roads that we build actually does help with the resiliency of your transportation network. So they were very much in favor of it. They didn't ask the town to share in the cost of having it versus not having it. They were in support of it, but they say that if we want wider sidewalks and bike lanes and other enhancements, as typical with NCDOT roadways, we would expect to share in that cost.
What is the projected cost for this? I heard $20 million. And what would our additional cost be if we added those?
For the grade separation by itself?
Yeah, for the grade separation.
They've not priced it out, to my knowledge, separately from the project. The project overall is over $100 million, but they've not priced out this as a separate cost component for us.
The overall project? Not
US 64 project, the entire corridor.
Only $100 million.
Yeah, it'll be.
Really, I'm surprised.
Yeah. I think it'll be well over 100.
5 easy pavements. 5 easy pavements.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
No interest.
But and here are the traffic volumes. I know these may be hard to see, and there are peak hour turning volumes, but just to give you a breakdown, I extrapolated these to estimate what would be a daily volume on this roadway, and on this north end for this I guess is 2040, so it's a pretty long-term projection. They show it would result in about 1,700 vehicles per day on this north end and about 3,000 vehicles per day on this south end. That's very low for a collector street. I think the volumes may be a little low. I would expect a little bit higher, especially up on this end. But even so, it shows there's a lot of capacity left over on this roadway. So for a roadway of this type, it's not unusual to see those kind of volumes. In fact, you would expect even more than those 2040 volumes. And in contrast to that, at the interchange, you're looking at about at over 22,000 vehicles per day on the north end of the interchange, and that's the projection with the Shepherd's Vineyard Drive connection. So, you're providing a local route for people to get around the interchange where, levels of service are projected to be pretty good. You're talking about level service CD at the interchange in 2040 based on the projections, but there'll still be congestion here. You'll have traffic signals, you'll have turning movements. Any kind of interchange you introduce into this area is going to create additional congestion, and especially when you're over 20,000 cars a day, it's going to there's going to be a lot to negotiate with these movements. So unless you have to be over here at the interchange, you may not want to be over at the interchange. As far as our recommendation goes, we are in support of it. Again, reiterating what Shannon pointed out, it reconnects those north and south ends of Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. It does address concerns from residents we heard that were, of US 64 becoming a barrier. I think some people would like to see a lot more connectivity preserved along US 64, but it's just difficult to do when you've got a roadway carrying this much volume when you're trying to add mobility. This will serve as a multimodal slow-speed connection for local traffic. It will provide access to destinations on both the north and south sides of US 64, and it is the shortest route for bicycle and pedestrian access. And again, back to transit, it will serve anticipated bus routes for a location that we expect to serve transit for the long term. And we have recommended the following. So we recommended a little bit narrower travel lanes than 12 feet. Say probably 11-foot lanes is typically what DOT recommends as a minimum. That helps with the width of the roadway not being any wider than it needs to be. And also we want to install bike lanes, so that adds back to the width, but at least we've saved a couple of feet with reducing the lane widths. We want sidewalk installed, and typically we ask for a little bit wider sidewalk. But in this case, I'm not sure if we're sticking with the 5 feet under the bridge or as typical based on our...
we discussed that.
Okay.
I think we may have asked for 8 there.
Okay. So sometimes if we're on a structure, we currently ask for wider sidewalks because we've had some problems with other bridges that have been built where you have a very narrow sidewalk and you're right adjacent to the road and then the other side of the bridge. So we might ask for a little bit wider sidewalks under here, which would be a cost share. One of the other things that came up was concerns about event-related parking with the amenity center. So the consultant has been asked to look into that. It's a little bit outside of their scope, but we want to make sure we address the community's concerns with that. And also, replacement landscaping is very important. We don't want them to have to remove any more mature trees than they have to, but when they do remove, we want them to replant as best they can, and the town will have opportunities to participate in that review and any cost shares that for additional plantings that we might want to see. And here's a typical section just to give you an idea. So here's a landscape median. Here's one travel lane in each direction, a bike lane adjacent to the travel lane, and then a grass utility strip, and outside of that your sidewalks. So just a real basic concept. And then under the bridge, of course, you lose your median where it has to neck down to be as narrow as possible. The next steps, NCDOT is going to meet with Shepherd's Vineyard neighborhood, from what we understand, to basically show them plans and get additional comments. That's not the only meeting they're going to have. I think they've got a number of small group meetings coming up, from what I understand, to get additional comments and share information with people. And then they will eventually select a preferred alternative for the US 64 corridor. And from what we're seeing so far, we think they're going to plan for the compact diamond interchange. They showed the other interchange concept. I think the only one they showed to the public was the contraflow for Lake Pine, which we're not big fans of the contraflow interchange because it does some really weird stuff, and it's not something that's ever been built before. So I don't know that I want to be the first, especially if that much money is being invested in the project. So the simple diamond, it's those the turns on those can get over capacity relatively quickly, but we think based on those 2040 projections, it'll hold up rather well. And it also helps preserve access to those adjacent businesses around there as best as possible. Even with that compact design, we're still possibly losing the Wendy's and losing some other uses, but again, it's probably as tight of an interchange as you're going to get there. So,
do you have a reaction to the one of the comments we got about people using Chimney Hill Drive as a cut through when this road is busy, or using it as a cut through to get to other places?
Cut through. So I'm just trying to think of the layout of the neighborhood and how they would be cutting through.
It's pretty rare because it's not intuitive. And yeah, you could, but you kind of have to know where you're going. Mm-hmm. It's not at all intuitive, and my casual observations is that people don't use Chimney Hill unless they live there, or worst case, they live over on the backside of Laura Duncan and they're taking Chimney Hill over to East Ham, over to Indian Trail, or whatever it was called, Apache Trail, kind of get over towards the other side of Knollwood, right? Where Councilman Moyer is.
Yeah.
But I mean, that to me is not a cut through because that's connected residential subdivision. So I don't see that that's a real threat. My look at it, and the only time I've ever done it was mostly when I was visiting someone there and I used an alternate exit to get out rather than go back the way I came. So I just don't see, and I live near there, so I have opportunities to use it. It's just not a very valid cut through.
Okay.
So as I think from a risk standpoint, it's not. It's just a good interconnected subdivision back in there.
To the north, we have Pine Plaza Drive connected, and DOT is installing some roundabouts on Pine Plaza Drive to help
Yeah.
with traffic flow. And one of the roundabouts is actually planned for the intersection of Shepherd's Vineyard Drive
Yeah,
at
that'd be good.
Pine Plaza Drive. So
Nice
that'll
and wide there.
Yeah. So it'll help with that, and then so if you're on the Laura Duncan end, there's a lot of incentive just to use Laura Duncan Road to cross 64 and use that roadway as a connection rather than trying to wind through the neighborhood to find your way back out to Shepherd's Vineyard Drive.
Is there a plan to connect the Knollwood neighborhood to the library directly?
There is not.
What's the plan with Norwood Drive and 64?
It would be closed off.
It would be closed off. It'd be a-
Although, to be clear, correct me if I'm wrong, but from your house, you could drive to the library without ever leaving residential streets. You'd have to go to the other side of Knollwood and come through Shepherd's Vineyard, but you can get to the library without getting on Laura Duncan.
And every
Or
once in a while, I
64.
get a guy that wants to go right through the dirt and through the bushes.
Is that right? Yeah. Pedestrian?
Yeah, no, in a car.
Oh, in a car.
In a car, just drive right through.
Wow.
That's you, right?
No, I'm like, look at
I
that guy.
missed my driveway again.
Just rained 5 days straight. He got stuck.
Oh, man. Okay, let's give the floor back to Mr. Dalton here.
Yeah, so I guess that concludes the presentation. I don't know
Okay.
if there's any questions following that, but
No, I appreciate the
Well, let me get one more
presentation.
reaction from you. There's talking about the property value reductions that may be realized if the road's busier. Do you have a reaction to that?
well, it's gotten a lot busier in downtown Raleigh, and I don't see housing prices going down. So that's usually what I would look at it from that perspective. Is traffic volumes don't necessarily affect property values directly like that. I'm not an appraiser, but I hear that argument a lot about if you connect this road or if traffic picks up, it's going to reduce my property values. And it's a lot of people that are moving to this area are buying houses for convenience, for a lot of the features this area has. And there are a lot of people that don't like traffic congestion, but there are people buying houses on very congested roads, even around downtown Apex, and paying the premium for them. So.
And with the 1,700 people, would that cause backups anywhere, or is that expected to be kind of a really A-rated road in the intersections north and south?
That's the volume down there at Old Riley Road. It's less than at the Old Riley Lake Pine intersection as far as that intersection goes, and we will discuss with NCDOT whether or not a traffic signal might be warranted down there at the intersection of Old Riley Road at Shepherd's Vineyard Drive.
And what about to the north? Would that be one you'd look at too?
That's where the roundabout is planned to go.
Oh, you said the Pine Plaza and Shepherd's Vineyard would be a roundabout?
Be a roundabout.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
That's the current plan.
In front of the apartment complex?
Yeah. So as far as congestion goes, I mean, we based on what they've shown us, the levels of service are adequate. Obviously, if we start having capacity problems down on Old Raleigh Road, they would look at signal warrants.
Would
for
that be
location.
okay? Because isn't there a signal right there, like 100
Yeah.
feet right up the hill?
I was going to
That's the
say,
problem.
wouldn't a roundabout do better in that
They did indicate,
place?
They're going to realign Old Raleigh Road coming into
they
I
did
thought they-
Lake
indicate in
Pine.
a
We did that somewhat before, but I think I've seen things. Well, better. They're going to
In a
realign that.
recent email, they indicated that they are planning to signalize Shepherd's Vineyard at Old Raleigh, and that it will be synchronized with the other signals that they're planning to install.
Okay.
Yeah, the good thing about those is they're offset T intersections,
Right.
and those operate a lot better than if you had two four-leg intersections really close together. So you can there's some research that's been done. I've seen some presentations on that where they show actually a lot of benefits from signalizing two offset Ts that are relatively close together.
Yeah. All right. Any other questions for Russell or comments? I appreciate the presentation.
Thanks.
All right. At this time, that concludes new business. We have only one item left, a closed session item, possible motion to go into closed session to consult the town attorney regarding Upright Builders versus Town of Apex. Is there a motion?
So
Make a
mo-
motion.
Second. Okay, I heard that motion. I heard two motions. So
Motion's one.
discussion. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. All right, so we're going into closed session. And let the public be aware there is nothing left on the agenda following closed session. Thank you.